Connor and Moira Rosa were killed when Galen 4 was overrun by Talarian forces. Jonah broke his arm riding a Testayan. And are banana splits really one of the best inventions ever? Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach frickin' Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 4, Suddenly Human. Story by Ralph Phillips. Teleplay by John Welpley and the Jerry Taylor. Directed by Gabrielle Beaumont. That's cool. The date was October 13th, 1990. Where were you? How you doing today, Sirach?
Great. I'm doing great. Jerry Taylor, Ralph Phillips, and who was the last person?
It was, let's see, John Welpley. And it says John Welpley ampersand Jerry Taylor, which means they were writing partners, not two writers working together on a script, but actual writing partners. I feel like, is this Jerry Taylor's first credit? Because she ended up becoming huge and integral part, I believe, like a showrunner on Voyager in subsequent years. But I'll check to see if that
I
was
was going
her
to ask
first.
about. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Jerry Taylor's career because I don't recall meeting Jerry Taylor. I may have, but I don't recall meeting Jerry Taylor off the top of my head. And yet, uh, it's Jerry Taylor is a guy, right? Or is it?
No, it's a lady.
A lady?
Jeri, spelled like Jerry Ryan. And actually, I
Okay.
just checked. Yes, this is her very first writing credit on any Star Trek. Then she had 13 in total for Next Generation. She had
Okay.
3 credits for Deep Space Nine, a story by in the second season, The Homecoming, which was the first of
Ooh.
the 3-episode arc, in
Yeah.
season 2 of Deep Space Nine, and 2 story buys for the Maquis Part 1 and 2 at the end of season 2. But then her big breakout was, everybody knows, Star Trek Voyager. She was big time. She was the creator of the show, or one of the creators. She was a showrunner. She was
Oh, yeah.
everything for Voyager. Anyway, Jerry
Yeah.
Taylor. She's still around too. She lives up in like way northern California on the coast. Beautiful area.
Yeah, I'm seeing she's 86 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Put it down. Great. So yeah, I don't think I met her, even though she did write an episode. I was in Homecoming.
Surely.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't remember meeting her ever. But definitely shout out to Jerry Taylor. My first impression of when I first, the episode started right away. My first impression
I love this.
was uh, not another kid episode. Kids again.
That's
That was the
me.
first.
Me too.
First thing, yeah,
Because
because they just did the kid episode, right? I mean, is that
we've done a few of those, and we've also done a few of the adult version of this, which is they captured some guy or they saved some fugitive guy and he's on the ship. And I'm like, wow, Next Generation is all over this storyline, whether it's a rescued child or a rescued rogue bandit guy. I'm like, there got to be a dozen of these episodes already. Deep Space Nine,
mm-hmm.
I can remember a couple, like Tosk early on, but that was great. That was a great twist there. I remember the one with the kid Jem'Hadar that grew really fast. But
Mm-hmm.
there was also one where Kira like fell in love with some rascal or something. I don't know. Anyway, but Next Generation loves this storyline, right?
Yeah, it actually needs like a name for it. I think we talked about this before, but it's the we have the guy that you want and you need to give him back type of thing, you know?
Right. We had an acronym for it. I remember what the
Yes.
acronym was, but I can't remember what the words were.
What was
It's
the acronym? Yeah, I remember that we talked about this. It's the asylum seeking
yes,
sentient, the ass.
asylum Seeking sentient. You got it. That's exactly what it is. It's not
Yeah.
ass, it's A dash SS,
Oh,
of
thank you
course.
for clarifying that.
This
So
is definitely an ass episode. This episode
hey,
is ass for sure.
it's funny. We just came up with that, and here they come bringing it back again. But
Yeah.
that's what I got. The first thing, the first thing was because the episode before this was the Rick Berman episode where brothers,
Yeah.
where right the two brothers, the young brothers, and then also Data and Lore. But it had the storyline, which the B storyline was those two young brothers that were, one of them ate poison because the other one tricked him on something, and that was kids in an episode. So I think that if you're going to be presenting episodes, you have to space out certain themes. Like I wouldn't want to see another ass episode right after this episode, for example. Like, it wouldn't make sense to see, oh, another episode right out on the heels of this one where we have the guy that you want and you can give us 5 minutes or I'll destroy the ship. If that happened again in the next episode, I would be like, why are you
Mhm.
recycling so quickly?
And
So quickly. That's okay. Yeah.
half of the first and second season were all 15-year-old Wesley Crusher saves the day, right? Which was
Yes.
kid centric episodes. And now that he's an actual adult, he's an acting ensign, he's like 18, 19. Now he's basically relegated to like
Yeah.
2 lines per episode. And now I'm like, well, actually, I wouldn't mind hearing from Wesley. Do you have something to add, sir? But
Yeah.
now he's like,
Yeah.
well, now that I'm 18, I don't want to save the day anymore.
Exactly. This is a perfect opportunity for you to talk about this kid, relate to the fact that your
Yeah.
father, you grew up without a father, or some,
Mhm.
there could have been a moment of bonding there. Um, Instead, they wanted to bond Picard, who this is Picard's kryptonite, and they
Yeah.
tried to. It seems like they're trying to cure that. Like they're saying, okay, um, let's try to ease that image of him up because he does admit to it, right? I've never been particularly comfortable around children. He was talking to Counselor Troy, and so it seems like when you build a star character, a captain of a show, the leader of your crew, and essentially the space hero, you want to make sure that he doesn't have too many flaws. So when you do
Mhm.
see certain flaws in his character, you try to glaze over it a little bit, or you know, um, uplift it a little bit, prop it up. And in this case, they were dealing with his particular flaw, which is dealing with children. And I felt like they're making it. This is an attempt at trying to course correct for the earlier season Picard hates grumpy around kids Picard. So this is like a course correction for that to some degree. But
Mhm.
but didn't really accomplish it to my expectation. What do you think?
It's definitely a slow arc. He's getting better. He's had his moments, right? He's had his moments with Wesley. He's had his moments with whatever, you know. But to me, I remember seeing this episode back in the day. And I pretty much, for me, this is my kryptonite is kid episodes, saving the one-off rogue character episodes, and the courtroom drama episodes. Those are the ones that start off already needing to prove themselves to me. Some of them end up being great, fantastic, phenomenal. But I'm saying like those are ones where I start off going like, oh man, and then usually I get, turned around a bit. But I remember the kid with, because of his hair. Like I just remember like I didn't remember the story as much, but I remember the kid, his face and his hair. Um,
Yeah.
but I didn't remember. I remember there was like 5-10 minutes left in this episode and thinking like, geez, this episode is just gonna like fart. It's just gonna like all the way down, right? It's not gonna really it just started at a plateau and it never really goes up. but I was wrong. It actually had a very impressive twist, which was at the end when Picard says, "You can stay with the guy." And by impressive, I mean, I 100% did not expect it. Even though I saw this episode, I had forgotten that part because I hadn't
Right.
seen these in a long time. Uh, but it's a very non Star Trek twist. Every once in a while, Star Trek goes, I know what you're thinking, and you're wrong. It's going to go in a totally un-Star Trek direction, which this did. I thought for sure the kid's going to choose to stay with his family. That's where they led us, what they led us to believe. They led us to think, okay, we know where this is going. He's going to say, I want to see my family. I want this and that. And then Picard was going to stand up for his rights and tell that captain, you stand back. He's made his decision or something like that.
Hmm.
But a total twist. And then you even think, or I thought, oh, now Picard's saying the son could go back, and the kid's going to say, no, actually, I do want to go back to Earth. Nope, not at all. It was beautiful. It was amazing. I was very impressed by it. However, I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that decision, but that's what's so good about it is I I was sitting there after it ended thinking like for 5 minutes, like, wait, is that the right decision or isn't it? And I just kept going back and forth and back and forth. So that's actually really good with Star Trek is when they bring up something that you hadn't thought about or put it in a perspective that you hadn't considered. So I would love to know if you think Picard made the right choice or if he should take a 14-year-old child back home to his family.
Yeah, I think this was about the child's choice more so than Picard's choice. I think that's what they were trying to say, that this child, based on their lived experience, was mature enough to make a decision for himself. Uh, and I think that was the judgment call made by Picard. And I think that was not so much just Picard deciding which way he wanted to go, but more like observing that this child was so willing to get the lifestyle that they wanted that they were willing to even commit murder and all this other stuff. So that was the kind of debate as far as ethical or moral, in my opinion, in this episode. But whether he made the right decision, I really can't tell. What I thought was clear was that this parent, this father, that basically adopted father for this boy. Um, what was clear to me was that this adopted father loved this kid and properly explained the things that I thought they had questions about, like the broken arm or ribs or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was. I thought they gave a valid explanation into the origin of those things. So what may have appeared as abuse actually was just a roughhousing and child's play and an active kid who clearly this kid was an active kid. So that's a believable thing too, right? This was not a kind of docile kind of
Yeah.
sit in the corner traumatized person. This is somebody who's actively engaged, moving around, very physical child. So and that's what I thought was another part of the episode that could have been explored a little bit more if you're going to go into this discussion. Um, this is a story about a multi-ethnic kind of upbringing for a child. This is a
Yeah.
child who grew up as a human, now growing up in a Telarian culture, and he mentioned all of those things that they do, running by the river and making those sounds and stuff. So this is a person that has adopted Talarian culture and is basically has a multi-ethnic upbringing. That's why
And
I think some
Tolarian
of it,
culture has adopted him clearly. He didn't feel like an
right?
outsider. He was the son of a captain. That's also important to note is he wasn't like, the other kids don't accept me or anything like that. So that was also interesting, but sorry, go on.
Yeah, exactly. So he felt one and the same with the rest of the group that he was with. So, um, I do think that that could have been explored a little bit more, and really ultimately, I think the premise on the beginning that set us up for this episode was a misdiagnosis by Dr. Crusher that this kid may have been suffering from Stockholm syndrome. And that automatically kind of triggers us to think, oh, this is a person who has fell in love with their captor and, through abuse and mental torture of whatever kinds of ways, has now identified and bonded with this person based on abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the misdiagnosis should have been injected differently because it reflects negatively on Dr. Crusher. It would have been better if Dr. Crusher gave a list of possibilities of which maybe Stockholm syndrome could have been one of them, but there could have been other kinds of traumatic, you know, impacts on this kid's behavior that she could have also said, well, he also could be suffering from a deep concussion and da 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 da, and suffers from these kinds of symptoms of memory loss and
Oh.
this and that or whatever. And so there should have been a list of things that he could have been suffering from, Stockholm syndrome being one of them. But by automatically going to that as the first initial, like, this is it, this is the diagnosis, that did a disservice to this
Mm-hmm.
kid and to everybody else.
Yeah, sets us on the wrong course. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. Now, I can't help but think, like, if only Picard had, like, somebody on the crew that could, like, sense the kid's feelings and
If they had like somebody with a superpower like that,
yeah, that could sense the kid's feelings and would know, no, 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 he's not suffering from Stockholm syndrome. He's just a normal kid that really loves his found father. Boy, like a
you would need to
counselor.
have like telepathy or something
Yeah,
like
like
that.
but unfortunately, but there were some scenes with Counselor Troy also giving advice, so that was interesting.
If you only had somebody with a
Yeah,
superpower to be able to read minds.
yeah,
Well,
but yeah,
and interestingly enough, that was another thing. She was able to sense a life form aboard a ship that was on its way in the beginning of this episode. That she's like, I sense somebody's there aboard, or something like that, right? Was there? I sense he's
yeah.
alive.
And again, they went to her too late. They speculated. They said, well, we don't know if there are any life forms on there. Well, sometimes they like to kill people that come on their ship and blah, blah. And they're going back and forth and back and forth. And Troy's just sitting there going, when are they going to ask me? I could literally end 7 minutes of mansplaining right now of people like trying to outdo each other with trivia by just telling them. But I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to wait until they actually turn and ask. And then they ask, and she's like, "Oh, you realize I'm here? Yes, I'm Counselor Troy, and I say there are people on board. So go ahead and let's move forward with that. Okay, time's wasting."
Yeah, but that again, this is the weirdest superpower that she has because
Because it turns off and on based on the
and
episode.
yeah, yes, it turns off and on, and the range, like she was aboard the ship, sensing another ship away. I don't know how far away that is, but it's not. It wasn't
But not a
close.
kid 8 feet from her.
But when he's standing right in front of her face, she's like, I don't know. I don't think maybe it is Stockholm. You're right. Like, I don't know. That to me is like, that's one of the flaws of the episode for me. Um, the initial one for me was the kid episode. You can't have back to back kid episodes in this show. Like, you don't have any for a long time. You come off of Best of Both Worlds, sets us up for this intergalactic, like, world dominion level kind of end of the Federation type moment, and then we go to back kid episodes, kind of funkying around a little bit, just being kids type stuff, and it's like, okay, this isn't like a heavy, deep, like psychological episode. Um, so that was where I had, and this is another thing. Uh, I know we're getting to the break, but
I feel like you're going to
yeah,
racquetball soon, but I don't know where you're going.
no, this is not even racquetball. That's a whole nother like
Yeah, we'll
topic
get
over
into that in our
we
cosplay
get into
for Vegas. Yeah.
that. Wait till we dress up. Uh, no, this is my thing. The grandmother or whatever is the admiral, right? Admiral Rosa,
Yep.
and this admiral sends a video message. Like I haven't seen this kid in 20 years, the lost long relative of our family, and instead of calling and getting like a face-to-face moment, like, hey, let me see what you look like, let me talk directly to you, and instead it's like,
I
I
know.
heard so much
A
about you.
text.
One day when I get to see you, I hope that like in the future when you have this kind of like I would be like, I'm on my way. I'm taking one of the ships. Put you on screen. I need to
Yeah.
talk to you. Let's FaceTime each other. There was no FaceTime
It was
moment.
strange that she did a recorded message text rather than a call.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. I was like, wait, you just have a prepared speech and you're just going to send it to him like a message in a bottle and just be like, all right, I've done, I'm spent. That's all the lovey-dovey
Yes.
crap I can do for the week. Okay, I can't. I'll talk to him face to face
Exactly.
later.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm busy. It was weird. Yeah, I thought they should have an actual conversation. Um, but I did want to talk about the grandparents too, but we got our break coming in a minute or two here. So before we get to that, I would also like to point out, we did mention the racquetball. That was, I think Picard said something to the effect of, when I have a big decision or something like that, I go and play racquetball. Like I've never played racquetball. Okay. I
Yeah.
played tennis and I've played ping pong, and I see people playing pickleball, completely taking over tennis courts at the local parks, which that's seems kind of annoying to tennis players, I would think. But racquetball seems like a sport when I see it being played where you don't have time to ponder life's decisions because it's moving so fast. Everything's moving and you're reacting and you're going. If you're even thinking
Yeah.
about anything other than racquetball, that ball is going to hit you in the mouth. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it seems like to me.
I've only seen people play racquetball, and I think I did some workouts in a racquetball area, but I wasn't actually, playing the game. Here's what I think. I think he was thinking about aggression. I thought that's what my interpretation of what Picard was saying.
Mm,
When I have things on my mind, it's like going to hit a punching bag. You're releasing anger and you're releasing aggression, and I thought that's what he was taking him there as a release valve for anger.
that's a
Because
much better
really,
take. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought. Because this
Mm.
kid looked like he was built up with anger, and he wanted to like swing. Obviously, he wanted to kill somebody, so he was very angry the whole time. He was fighting people on the bridge. They had him by uh, Picard has to walk. Stop doing that. It's like okay, it's
Stop
like
trying to
okay.
kill people. And so, the howling. Okay, well, we'll get into that.
Oh
Hang
my
on,
god.
everybody, stick around. We're going to talk about the howling. And by the way, I watched with the closed captioning to make sure I get all the alien names right and stuff like that. When I hear howling and the closed captioning says wailing, do you guys think that
Hmm.
was howling or wailing? We'll talk about that. So do not go anywhere. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Sirach the Game Changer Lofton.
Game changer.
Here are the trivioids of the week. Kind of some weird ones. A Talarian spacecraft is adrift. Connor and Moira Rosa were killed when Galen 4 was overrun by Talarian forces. Captain Picard is not cringing, he's just acknowledging his limitations. Captain Picard nearly skipped his entire childhood. The Alba Ra is a contemporary Talarian musical form. That was nuts. Jono broke his arm riding a Testaean. Talarian warships are limited to neutral particle weapons, high energy X ray lasers, and Merculite rockets. Not the best trivioids, but they're trivioids nonetheless. they, they,
Yes, they are.
they now, if somebody says, well, what did Talarian warships have as far as weaponry? Well, neutral particle weapons, high energy X-ray lasers, and Merculite rockets. Okay, well then how were they able to take over a Federation colony? The world may never know. Anyway,
From the howling,
yeah, so what did you think about that
the
howling
wailing
or
or the
wailing?
howling.
What,
Yeah,
what,
I think that was the most annoying. Like I was with Picard on that. Shut the hell up!
it
That was
was, but it
it
worked.
was annoying.
It was
Yeah,
sufficiently annoying for us to completely understand
yeah,
why he's saying, dude, you gotta stop this. I know you're
yeah,
14. I mean, your the actor's
yeah.
probably 23, but whatever. That's how they
Probably
did. That's how they did it
maybe
back then.
21.
They're just like,
Yeah.
let's just get a short 20-year-old. Okay, that's good enough. He's short.
Even Worf was like, I don't want any. I got to get out of here. Worf dropped him off in the room. So he started howling. He turned around. He's like, I'm out of
That
here.
was another
They don't
kid
pay me.
episode when
They don't
Worf
pay
had
me
his
enough for this.
when Worf had his brother. Remember, he made a brother, like whatever the kid's name was. I forgot the kid's
Oh
name, but
yeah,
he's like, I
yeah,
will be
yeah,
your brother. See you never. That was it.
yeah,
That's the end of that kid. Jeremy
yeah.
Ashter, something like that. Jeremy Ashter, or something.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
will put him to bed. Now we know how he puts kids to bed. He walks in there, he turns around, and he walks right out.
there you go.
You are in the bed.
Yeah. What you do from here
Time
on
to
out
sleep.
is your business, not that.
Uh,
Okay. So there are a lot
yeah,
of points of view here. From the Temerian captain or Talarian captain, sorry, Temerian is, I believe, Darmok, which we'll meet later, Captain Dathon. From the Talarian captain's point of view, he says, hey, I rescued a child during war, and according to my customs, I can find a home for him. I cared for him. I raised him. I love him. This is my child. And I will go against your ship with weaker weaponry if I have to fight back and get my child. His point of view is very clear. Totally get it. Picard's point of view is the tough one for me, is the one that I vacillate back and forth on. I lean against it, actually. But then there's one more point of view, which is his family, his biological family, because he's 14. He was abducted when he was 4, basically. Okay. So imagine you have a child. Your child gets married. They have their own child. You have this grandson that you presumably love and whatever. Your child and your child's mate get killed. Your grandson gets abducted. You mourn. 10 years later, Starfleet captain, who you're in charge of, by the way, says, hey, we've rescued your grandson. It is a joyous occasion. You say, I can't wait for you to meet my family. We're so excited. Here's a text, whatever. And then imagine if your subordinate, Captain Picard, says, you know, I just didn't feel right about it. So I gave him back to his captors, the people that killed your child. I gave him back. I didn't feel, it didn't sit right with me. How, I can't imagine you're gonna be like, I respect that. You've got gumption, kid. I respect that answer. We're gonna cancel the family reunion and party in his honor. I don't know. What do you think? I feel like that is a really hard pill to swallow.
yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, it is a hard one to swallow. Um, but they don't call her Admiral Connaught for nothing.
Admiral cannot accept this one.
Yes. Uh, I don't know. It was that's a weird thing, and that was the judgment call, and even crazier than that, and to add to what you're saying is, and he tried to kill me by stabbing me in the heart, and I forgave him for that too. Like, like I don't know, that was it was a weird ending to me. the whole stabbing in the heart.
Mhm.
Uh, you know,
I thought that was going to be the I thought that was going to be the excuse on how to keep him. I'm sorry, we can't give your son back to you. He's committed a crime and he must serve
mhm,
the time according to our customs, and we will bring him back to Earth and his original family, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, to serve his sentence. And
mhm.
that's what I
Me too.
thought
I
was
thought
going to
that was the
be.
out.
Mhm,
It
exactly.
would have been the right. There would have been the out. And
Mhm.
actually, that was what Riker was saying. Riker was saying that, which is I don't know. It was just I can't say that. Okay, well, what if the kid is 18 and not 14? What if that kid is 18 and you find him and he says, "I want to go back to my captor"? Is,
And
are you going to
it
take?
sits better with me, I think. It that sits better with me, but it also makes me think that he should be even more put into custody for the crime. So it's kind of heightened to me. But a 14-year-old, I'm like, I don't know, he's still a kid. Now, according to those other people's customs, he has the right to choose. But if it's tough because the 14-year-old's perspective, we get it. Like this is his, he remembers his really small childhood and how horrible that is. But this is his father. This is who he is. This is what he wants to be. Do you? I don't know. So it's kind of ridiculous. Like this is a tough one. I feel like because
This is a tough one. It's not that clear.
no, I was thinking that since it's not that clear, they should have said, okay, we will give you your son back. But he does have a family on Earth that literally has the right to have him, and an admiral that literally can wage war and wipe out your entire civilization to get her grandson back. And she'd be well within her rights to do it because you have captured her grandson and refused to relinquish him. Okay, fine. However, how about this? You can have your son back because that's what he wants, but you have to bring him to Earth a minimum of 1 week every 6 months so that he can meet his family, so that he can experience his heritage, so that his family can see him, so that he can make a more educated decision on where he wants to live. Maybe he wants to just go back and forth and visit both, but it's just not fair to completely excommunicate him from Earth and his actual family and just say, yeah, sorry, find a happy medium, right? Visitation right. I don't know. There's got to be something. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know how it would work under those kinds of intergalactic rules because this is technically an adoption. It's technically an adoption. Just wasn't sanctioned by the Federation, but it's a prisoner of war slash adoption,
From their point of
and
view, it's just a straight up legal adoption, a
it's a legal
charitable,
adoption.
compassionate
Yeah,
adoption from their point of
yeah,
view. Yeah.
and he specifically said in our customs, if you lose a son, and he says he lost his son, and
Mhm.
so it was like a whole like it's an adoption process for his culture essentially, and that's exactly what he did. Now, does a child get to have say in it? Not really, because in adoptions processes now they don't the child doesn't really have that much say on where it happens
Mm.
when it's happening, right? So I don't know. This is a very complex story. I think it could have gotten way more into the weeds of what you're talking about. That would have been better for me as well. I would have liked to see maybe a an ideological dispute between Admiral Rosa and Captain Picard and let them play this game of chess with words
Mhm.
to kind of battle out.
Yeah, this one could have been a courtroom drama because there are four sides
Yes,
to this. There's the Talarians, there's the
yes.
kid, there's Picard, and there's the family headed by Admiral Rosa. I mean, that those are the four sides to this thing, and they all have slightly different wants and wishes.
And that's where I think that, yeah, 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 there should be some kind of adjudicating body that deals with this, because it all falls in Picard's hands because he's the captain of the ship. It all falls in his decision, right? So this all comes on his shoulders, as opposed to an adjudicating body that deals with these kinds of matters in Starfleet,
Mhm.
asylum or custody or whatever department that is.
I will say,
Uh,
I
but yeah,
will.
if I'm Admiral Rosa, I'm pissed at Picard, right? You're like,
I'm going
what?
to
You
war.
did what?
I'm going to war.
No,
That's it.
at the very least, I'm reporting Picard and his actions, as what I would
Yeah.
consider as
You
not.
gave my
You gave
grandson
away my kid away.
back to his captors after I
Yeah,
said bring him to me, bathe him and bring him to me, basically. Like change his
yeah,
clothes and send him back over. Man,
yeah.
that's nuts. But I will say the ending was way cuter and sweeter than I expected. What a sweet moment when they're going to say goodbye and the kid takes off his gloves because he said they don't touch aliens. What a beautiful symbolic move that was. I was like, man, A plus ending there. Very sweet, very cute. What this was kind of like an A plus ending to like a D episode in my own personal, feeling. Kind of like what was the movie? The Star Wars movie, Rogue One. I felt like that was an A plus ending to a C movie, which made me actually really enjoy the movie because in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that was a great ending, stuck the landing. I remember it favorably. Now I remember this episode favorably because I can't get this decision out of my head. I'm like beating it to death. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you like the ending or were you like, too little, too late?
It was too little, too late for me at that point. It was okay, but it wasn't enough for me to redeem the episode. I had problems with it. I had problems with the murder. I think they could have written something else. I didn't think it should have been a murder. I think it could have been him trying to escape, grabbing a shuttle pod or something, trying to just take off. It should have been something else. The murder aspect of it wasn't believable. The other part that wasn't believable for me was they find this kid. He's super hostile. There's three guys on the bridge trying to hold him back because he wants to flip out because Troy asked him to take his gloves off. And then Picard invites him into his private quarters. Like, I don't see somebody who's exhibited that level of instability being invited into somebody's private space like the captain,
Mm-hmm.
who's the most important person on the show. So it didn't hold true to me that way too, because now obviously you left the captain's life vulnerable, and you see how, so that showed poor judgment on his part too. So while they were trying to redeem his kid friendly appeal, they actually made him have a set of very bad judgment calls. One, rushing to the agreeing with the Stockholm syndrome. Two, inviting him into his quarters where his own life was being threatened at some point. It's just like a long list of, and then three, giving him back to the person that stole him. Like, I don't know. This is,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
it didn't really show good judgment to me. I couldn't get it.
I was reminded, kind of a little tiny bit off subject, but I was reminded about when I was a kid, my parents were worried that they would be reported for, beating their child because I was always getting injured. I was always getting stitches. I had like over 100 stitches on me and never more than 5 at a time because I was just always bleeding and crashing and jumping, and so they were really worried about that. So when the guy explained it, like, oh, he's just it's just youth. He's just a kid. He does things. I was like, okay, I could buy that. I can buy
Yeah,
that. I don't know if it's true with
yeah,
this guy yet. We'll see, but I can buy it. Some kids are tentative. Some kids are pensive or they plan ahead. Other kids are just reckless. Like we don't know what we don't know. We
Can
think
I
we're
give?
invincible.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I wanted to add to. It just came to me how I
Yeah.
would have fixed this story.
Ooh, finally. We only have
Uh,
a few minutes left. Thank
uh,
God you got it. I'm ready for it.
this is what I would have done. I would have brought the grandmother on board the Enterprise, forced the meeting between the two of
Yes.
them, and have him try to kill her. Seriously,
I get it.
and
Yeah.
yeah, like he
Let's see
tries to
how
kill
much he
her.
really means,
Yeah,
how much he really feels
yeah.
this. Yeah.
He tries to kill her. She survives the same way Picard. Picard is adamant that, oh, I'm going to lock this guy up because he's tried to kill the Admiral and there's no way I'm giving him back. And then the Admiral says, no, you know what? I have been convinced that he doesn't want to be here with me. He won't be happy on Earth. Da, 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 da. He can go. And that way, the person who releases this boy or absolves his is the person who actually has rights to
Totally.
parental rights.
That actually has the right to make that call. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. That would have fixed this story right there. They just had to bring Admiral Rosa on board, who comes in another ship, comes on board the Enterprise, and the whole Admiral is on board the ship,
Mm-hmm.
and then the boys trying to connect with his grandmother doesn't want to, stabs her instead. She survives, and this makes the judgment call at the end while Picard's saying, "No, I'm not going to give it back." That would have been perfect.
Makes it more palatable. Jake Sisko, you should be a writer. I think
That's
there's
what they
some
wrote.
I think there's something there. I think there's something there.
I would have
Okay,
fixed it. Would have fixed it.
that's interesting. Okay. They did bring up a lot of other things. They did mention capital punishment. You're not going to die at my hands or anyone else's. Don't know if that means there's zero capital punishment, but certainly not for attempted murder, which seems to me like he was trying to imply there isn't any of that in the future. They also mentioned, oh, here was something that was really interesting. Uh, the lighting on Picard when towards the end, there are a couple scenes with Picard in his room, I believe, in his quarters. The lighting on him looked exactly like the lighting in Star Trek First Contact, the movie. Towards the beginning of the movie, when Picard is aware that the Borg are back and like a Borg implant fucking comes out of his eye, it's nuts. And you know this because he was captured by the Borg before. But when I saw these couple scenes and there was kind of like a close up on him and it was kind of darker on one side and kind of like grayish, bluish lighting, it looked basically identical to the lighting from First Contact. So I immediately was transported there. It was really cool. It was just funny to see that connection for me. Um, but I don't know anything else on this, Captain. Oh,
Did,
go ahead.
did you catch the rock and roll that they played in there when they were like, "This is Alba Ra"? Was listening to Alba Ra. The boy was listening to some music, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Picard walked in, and he's like, "Hey, turn that off." It sounded like some kind of rock and roll type thing, right? It was like the
There
first
was
time I heard rock and roll.
definitely there was definitely some 80s synth guitar going on and definitely some electric guitar going on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, there was definitely that and I was almost into it. I was like it almost works, but there were some musicians that are like,
I thought of you when I heard that. I was like, maybe Ryan knows where they
yeah, I
sampled this
check that out. That's called Horny Purple Toad. Ah, they're an 80s band. Not a lot of people know about them, but no, that was here's the thing. This is what I noticed with musicians. It's impossible for them to make something completely bad, right? If you hear a singer that's a trained singer, and if you say, okay, uh,
Sing off key.
sing something
Yeah.
terrible and off key, they can actually do it. They can make it sound whiny or silly, but they can't sing off key. Like their vocal cords are still trained to go. Same thing with musicians. You could tell these are musicians being like, we're going to make this thing sound horrible. But I'm like, it was still pretty okay. It was
It
still
wasn't
kind of
bad.
with.
I was like, let it play for a little bit longer.
Yeah,
I almost cut
I'm
it off too
almost
early.
with it. Yeah. Well, all right. So check this out. I think it's time for the home run of the episode. Oh yeah, it definitely is. We got to roll.
Okay. Home run of this episode. The the father was the home run in this episode. I thought the father was believable, consistent. I know he didn't have much to do in this episode, but the parts that he came in, he sold me on. There's no real foul play going on over here. I've been taking the best care of this kid. I treat him like my own son, and I'm willing to go to war over it because I love him that much and risk my own life. That was the winning performance for me because I believe that.
You know, that's amazing because that's totally mine. And I thought I was like, I actually was like, oh, we'll have a different one this time. But then I thought about it, I was like, I don't know, because there wasn't really a standout performer other than the father. I felt like that was the clear answer. And for me, it was because he made this episode work to the best of his ability. It was his performance that leaned us as an audience into understanding his point of view. Without an A plus performance, he is not a sympathetic character. We don't care what he says, you know, even though he should be according to the writing. It was especially his performance when Picard said, "We will return, you know, the child back to your custody." And he looks at them with all this genuineness in his eyes and he says, "Thank you, Captain." And it was that performance that I was like, whoa, this guy just turned me around. This guy did what the writers were intending to do, but we're not really sure if they did it. He made it work. So I totally agree. Great job by him. We should shout out his name very quickly so that he gets the love that he deserves. His name is
Captain Indar,
yeah,
aka
Sherman Howard. Great job, Sherman Howard. Okay, and also a great shout out to some other people, and their names are say it with me, you know them. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve
Humor.
England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom T.J. Jackson, Bay out in Missouri, Titus Moeller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Life from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manisfee, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Stern, the Roddenberries, and of course, Jason Oken and Greg K. Wickstrom. All right, everybody, stick around. We got the free for all. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Sir Rock Lofton. This is the free for all. Can you believe it? With Melissa Longo, who is here. We've got Jason M. Oken as well. Greg Kenzo, the macadamia man out in Hawaii in his Neelix and Chill shirt. We've got Eve England out in Wales. We've got Allison Leach Hyde finally back in New Mexico and with her Ferengi Eyes shirt. Cool. Mai is live in Tokyo with something important to tell us, I'll just bet. Carrie Schwent is wearing a Be Kind shirt, just like Stephanie was. The Matt Boardman is here with his To the Journey shirt. Chris Sterna is here, the wine guy. Faith Howell on the bridge of the Enterprise D. And Chris McGee is going to tell us things that we hadn't considered. First things first, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm gonna say this was a 6'7".
6'7". It's a Paul Pierce. It's a Paul Pierce. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Does anybody else have any guesses as to what the voters gave it on IMDb without knowing the answer?
I looked this time.
7.2.
It was 7.2 this
Okay.
time.
Yeah, same, Chris.
Oh, okay.
Greg Kenzo says he looked and he's seen everything. Everybody knows that.
I've seen it. I've seen it all.
I've seen all.
The answer is 6.4. 6.4 for Jerry Taylor's debut. And were there some kinds of or some sorts of?
None that I caught. Anyone else?
Non-appearance mentions? I didn't get one. All right. That dead air ends when Melissa Longo tells us what she thought of this episode.
Well, it was I had conflicting feelings about this episode. Mainly because my biggest question with this episode was, didn't the humans do exactly the same thing with Worf that the Tellarians did with Jono? So, I don't know. So I'm conflicted. It seems that there's a bit of hypocrisy there. But I will say that more and more I am liking Captain Picard. I like when he admits his limitations, and I like when he grows and learns things, and I think that the Federation can be a little bit arrogant in some respects sometimes, and I like that Picard learns from that, because he kind of grew up in the Federation, and they have this tunnel vision in the way things are supposed to operate in the entire universe. And I like that Picard is always seeking truth and always seeking the right answers, and admits when he's wrong. So I got that from this. And I have to say that one of my sisters, and I can't remember which one, had the hugest crush on Chad Allen when we were growing up, because he was on in Tiger Beat, and when was that other one, the Bop one? I can't remember. But
Cowboy Bebop?
I think it was just Bob.
Bop?
Yeah.
Or the Big Bopper is a music thing.
Yeah, pretty sure it was Bob.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, so confliction. But I have to say also, Ryan's background reminded me of that. My favorite moment in the episode was when Wesley gets banana split all over his face. That was funny. That's all I have.
I also want to ask everybody in the next segment, Things Left Unsaid, if banana splits truly are one of the greatest inventions. Because, thanks very much, Melissa Longo, for that. Yeah, it would have been cool if they involved Worf in this discussion, because it's like,
yes,
kind of knows what it's about.
Yeah.
Jason M. Oken is here, who knows pretty much everything about everything. What do you think about this episode?
Not enough about banana splits. I've always been a little bit conflicted about this one. I found it to be uncomfortable to watch in many different respects, because it is to some degree controversial with what happens story-wise, and I think Deep Space tried to do something somewhat similar with Cardassians, and you have kind of with a different outcome, a similar type story, and to some degree, perhaps the contrast would have been better had the alien conflict been a little bit more sort of fleshed out. The Federation seems to be at war with everybody. They were at war with the Cardassians, with the Klingons, with the Romulans, and now somebody else who in that race doesn't seem to be all that powerful to begin with. So it's kind of, it's a little odd. Almost seems like it's shoehorned into the story. So story-wise, something was a little off, and to some degree, visually to me, it was a little off, and we'll talk about some of that later. So again, I don't have a ton to say about this. It's certainly not bad, but for me, it's a sort of a step down from a couple of things we've seen certainly in season 4 and toward the end of toward the end of season 3.
Thank you very much for that tease, Jason M. Oken. I'd like to hear your opinion on the lighting too, because I mentioned to Sirach that a couple of the scenes, the lighting on Picard looked exactly like First Contact lighting when he had the Borg thing coming out of his eye in the dream sequence. We'll talk about that. Gregory Kenzo is out in Hawaii. What's up, Greg? What do you think of this one?
Not my favorite episode. I'll just start with that. Maybe it's because I think this is where I stopped watching when I joined the Seventh Rule. And so it was kind of like I knew it was going to happen. But yeah, so I'm excited for the next episode or the ones coming up. But to speak about this episode, this is the classic nature versus nurture debate. I think Jason already mentioned that it's a lot like the DS9 episode, Cardassians. It's season 1 episode. It's the one where the Bjorn kid bites Garrick's hand, like out of nowhere. Oh yeah, that's right.
What's his name?
But yeah, this had some good parts. The tearing up of the Talarian father at the end, like that's what really got me. Like all that posturing he was doing was because he really just loves his son. But just a few tidbits all throughout that Talarian music that was pretty banging. This made me want to play racquetball, really, like behind me, and I want to learn 3D chess because it just looks interesting. And I kind of really got into chess after the Queen's Gambit.
Good series.
The philosophy, yeah, it's a great series. The philosophy I took away from this episode is the age-old debate: do we have the right to impose our morality on other cultures or people? In what situation, what location, and to what extremes should Starfleet intervene? Yeah, cool.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Greg Kenzo out in Hawaii. Eve England is also out somewhere. It's Wales. How are you today? What do you think of this one?
Yeah, good, thanks. I think, Melissa, you made exactly the same point that I sort of scribbled down when I was watching this. I found it, I didn't dislike watching the episode. I thought it was quite a nice, easy episode to watch. There were lots of things in there, great bits of dialogue and interactions between the characters, which I liked. But like I said, I think what jumped out at me is it just seemed odd that they, put him with Picard. I liked some of the interactions we then had as a result of that, but I don't think that worked. And like I said, I think Worf would have been a much better fit for dealing with that in terms of the in-story situation. And then I think what I did like about it, but didn't like about it at the same time is the fact that they really did show how sort of stuck in their ways that the Federation and Starfleet is, in terms of never once did they really just sit down with Jonah and just talk to him about what he wanted and try to understand his experience. They just made all these assumptions, and they were trying to pigeonhole the whole thing to fit their own agenda. So, and I think we've seen it before. I do like this sort of question, this overarching question as to questioning what the Federation and Starfleet actually is, and are they any better than the Borg in some respect, in terms of how they're always trying to assimilate and get everyone to be more aligned with their own traditions and sort of ethos, etc. So I thought this episode really played up to that, and it was interesting then that it was right up until the end when Picard really realized that that's what they've been doing. And I quite liked the fact that they did have that realization that what they were doing wasn't right, and they had they'd made a mistake. And I quite like it when they show that vulnerability and the critique of the Federation and Starfleet in that way. And that's what I did like about it. And I don't know whether that was intentional, but when you look at it from that perspective, I thought that was quite interesting. So yeah, and I did also just find that sort of 10 forward scene just absolutely hilarious. That was brilliant. It's worth it just for that.
Thank you very much, Eve England out in Wales. Alison Leach Hyde is back in town, her town that is. What do you think of this one?
I'm going to fall into line that it was never one of my favorites, but I want to give Jeri Taylor props for this being her first episode. She wrote those characters very well for what we have established for them. Riker telling Data to go, check under humor, subheading slapstick. That was funny. I really liked that. That was a great little interaction between them. And I loved the way she wrote Troy, which is great. I'm really excited to have somebody actually write Troy well. Just her looking at the captain like, his dad's a captain. He's going to pay attention to a captain. He's only talking to you. You need to do this. And guess what? You're going to be better at it than you think you're going to be, because you're actually going to try. I'm going to make you try. So I really liked all the scenes with with Troy and Picard in this episode. I thought she brought humor to it and a little bit of seriousness when it was needed, because she will definitely be a little bit funny to Picard, which I enjoy. And his facial expression when he's like, "What? No, 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 you're not going to make him stay with me. No, 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 no." And I'm like, that was wonderful. So there are little bits of this episode that I think are fabulous. I'm also going to be in the camp that they should have been talking to Worf about this situation the whole time. Maybe not so much Beverly. I mean, I know she's a mom of a teenage boy, but Worf went through this and is an adult. So he has true opinions about this. So I did think they should have had more Worf in this episode. So I always think of this one as this is the Mirror Worf situation episode. That's how I remember it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Allison Leach-Hyde out in New Mexico. Mai is live in Tokyo. What's up, Mai? What'd you think of this one?
Giving you a pause there in case you need to edit my entire thing out later. Just being polite. Endar says he rescued Jono. Rescued? That's nonsense. It was forced adoption. It was kidnapping. There are other terms that are much more accurate. I mean, was Bob Marley singing of 400 years of loving adoption? Yes. Are we to praise the foundation of America's historical rural labor supply? Shall we now condone the federal policy in the late 1800s, otherwise known, very Star Trek-like, as the assimilationist era of forced adoption of Native Americans designed to slowly and insidiously dismantle Native American society? Now let's call it that what it is. Let's call it what it is. It's kidnapping. It's simple kidnapping. The issue is not about a cultural clash, as is described by the producers or directors, whoever they were. It's or feelings of belonging here or there. Worf says, "Is it worth it to go to war over a child?" I'm not even going to make a comment about who favors that. But Crusher replies, "You might not ask if it were your child." That's the Israeli position, and mine as well, I'm afraid. Jeremiah is playing space racquetball. He has a PTSD flashback. What more proof of the crime and tragedy of his kidnapping do you need? Picard's statement about the crime being his own was apologist and, to me, wholly disgusting. In so many words, he condoned kidnapping. As we recently celebrated the birth of America, its supposed freedom, a freedom which is only freedom for part of the society, anybody who's ever felt pain or empathy at the plight of African Americans then and now, anybody who's ever felt shame at the plight of Native Americans, must either be equally disgusted or question whether they actually truly care about those issues so pertinent to American society today. I think giving 6.4 to Jerry Taylor for this is an overly generous gift. I can't support it even one tiny bit.
But besides that, Mai, did you like it? Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mrs. Lincoln, did you enjoy the play? That was the play, Mrs.
I was thinking the same thing, actually, the Lincoln thing, but I was like, I don't know if people know that one. Thank you very much.
I gotta call it for what it is. It was bad.
Carrie Schwent, do you agree? Your thoughts?
Yeah, how to follow that? Yeah, I like it, and there are parts of it that sort of trigger a couple things for me, having been through very, very briefly a whole custody thing during the middle of my very messy divorce. That brings up some feelings, and I kind of lean towards Mai in that respect, but focusing on just keeping my thoughts in just the universe of the show, I do enjoy it that way. And for someone who claims they're not really good with kids, Picard actually does very, very well with Jono in the episode. He gives him the information he needs without forcing it on him and telling him, okay, this is, you're gonna go back to your this family, we're taking you back whether you want to or not. He gives him the information and he lets the kid make the choice. And by the end of the episode, he's got a few things in his head that are starting to percolate. He's starting to remember. So perhaps when he gets a little older, he might explore some of that later on after he goes back, because despite it all, he clearly grew to love the boy that he kidnapped, but there was genuine love there after a while. So the tiny sliver of light in that whole dark situation. But to bring things back up a little bit lighter, I love the hammock that Jono hangs out in Picard's quarters. That looked really comfortable. I am terrible at getting in and out of them, but I do enjoy a good hammock chill time. Yeah, this humor data just cracks me up. His line at the end when Riker's like, "Do you understand now?" No, but I'll take your word for it. That's definitely some steps forward in Data's understanding of humor, and I did enjoy that very much. I wouldn't be me if I didn't gush over the guest stars. The guy playing Jonah's dad, I've seen him in several things, including the original miniseries of Stephen King's The Stand, which I love
really?
both versions of. Yeah, he's in the very first episode when the super flu is really just getting rolling. But Chad Allen, I had seen him in some of the earlier things he did, but I have watched more times than I can count the entirety of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. And I read online that he took the role for the pilot. He just to make some money for college. He didn't think that the show was going to get picked up, and then he becomes a serious regular for 6 years. And he shows little glimpses of the acting range that he shows on Dr. Quinn in this episode. I can sort of see that feature character just in bits and pieces of him in the episode. And my limerick for the episode is a little bit more on the serious side. I decided to bring it from Picard's sort of musing over the situation in his head. So, there we are. I want to help the boy, but not sure how. Of his upbringing, he seems very proud. This situation's a mess, and it's causing much distress. The choice should be his to say where he is housed.
Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear. The Matt Boardman is here. What's up, the Matt? Your thoughts on this episode?
Well, I think I agree with a lot of people that this is an episode that's kind of uncomfortable to watch just because of the things that happen in it. I think as a whole, I'm not the hugest fan of it, but there are some really fun moments in it. You know, like the interaction with Wesley getting, like Melissa said, you know, Wesley getting banana split in his face, and then just being able to to laugh about it, you know, because that's just the normal teenage boy thing. But I also at the same and I love that we get more Picard growth, right? Because I think it feels like there's some course correction on Picard here, where we started out the series with Picard's like, I am not good around children. But now it's like, I feel like now that we're trying to, these stories are starting to become more about the characters rather than the alien of the week, the monster of the week, kind of like the original series was. I feel like there's more of an attempt to flesh out and to put a different I don't know, want to say soften Picard in a way, but to show that he's more than just the stuffy angry, like he always seemed like he was angry in the first season. Like I mean, if I had to wear that jumpsuit, I'd be angry too. But but I like that we're seeing, like, with each successive episode, we're starting to see more and more of the Captain Picard that everybody appreciates and enjoys, right? And so I like that there's some more growth for him there. I think it's a little presumptuous on the Federation's part that just because they don't understand the situation, they think, oh, you know, we see a couple scans and we think the kid's being abused, and now we're, you know, white knight charged to this. But I would hope that the conglomerate that is the Federation, that there would be some semblance of tolerance and understanding and rules in place for proper investigations rather than just to see something. And I can only imagine, that when this episode aired, I mean, people called and they were mad that the Next Generation was trying to replace the original series, or so they thought. I can only imagine the calls that they got after this when they're showing scenes of potential child abuse and then sending off a child with, you know, just because that maybe people's perceptions of that. So I'm so glad I didn't have to field those calls. But I mean, maybe in those regards, it was a successful episode because maybe whether you like it or you don't, it's definitely causing conversations.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Thanks very much, the Matt Boardman. Chris Sterna is here with an adorable pup. Look at that. Looks like a pit bull.
Gosh.
Looks like a little pit.
Kind of I'm lucky I'm not getting mobbed.
So what'd you think of this episode, Chris? Good to see you.
Thanks, man. I kind of keep a perspective that it's entertainment. And Star Trek's always been really good since the first 2 seasons, right, of the original series of entertaining us, but also kind of making us look at some things that aren't always comfortable to look at. And they touch people in different ways. So our own personal experiences cause us to see or notice things, good or bad, more than other people. And it had that effect, but it also was still entertainment, right? And so I think the episode on that level, it really hit a home run in that way. Now, on the pure entertainment and fun factor, it's not as comfortable to deal with issues and things that you might strongly disagree with, or there's some trauma in your own background. So that's pretty much what I thought of it.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Chris Sterna. I feel like you're down somewhere where there's a lot of wine stored. I'm not sure, but if I know
Right
you,
above me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
right
you very
above me.
much,
The
Chris.
ceiling is amazing.
Yeah,
I
it's
have to
gorgeous.
say,
Oh,
your
yeah,
ceiling, gorgeous.
Yeah, we live in a log home. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's cool. Yeah.
You can actually smell the ceiling from here,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean?
Smells good.
Yeah.
These
Thank
things
you very
hard,
much,
man.
Chris.
Thanks,
Faith
guys.
Howell is here. She's on the bridge of the Enterprise D, and we're so glad that she's here. What'd you think of this one?
Apologize in advance. I have a screaming toddler next to me, as usual lately. I basically agree with everybody so far. I find this one really easy to watch, and I have very fond memories of especially the hammock and the ice cream from when I was a kid. But definitely watching it today, I hit on a lot of different things. In particular, so Troy has always been my favorite. I guess maybe she was a role model. Thomas, here, you do it. She was a role model growing up. And but in this episode, Thomas. Okay, here, you do it. No. How about this one? But anyway, as I was trying to say, she definitely hit on some big no-nos for me as a counselor. Basically insisting that Captain Picard act as a father figure when he's made it clear he doesn't like children. So why are we forcing anybody to act in a parental role that doesn't want kids? Why is she not doing more when clearly this child has suffered some severe trauma? Why is she not doing more to, work with him and talk to him? I understand that they put that piece in there about he doesn't relate to females, but there's got to be a male counselor on the ship. I mean, come on, how many people are here? That's ridiculous. If she is the only one, like, let's talk about short-staffed, okay? Also, why the captain of all people? Like, he doesn't have other things to do? I mean, that just seemed weird to me. I think, and I think I would have matched him up with Wesley Crusher way earlier than the end. Just being around other people his own age seems to me it would be a much better connection than the captain himself. So definitely I enjoyed it. I love the interactions that we do see, but if we're applying any level of realism to this, I think they could have done better.
Got it. Thank you very much, Faith Howell. Thank you for that. Chris McGee is here. What's up, Chris McGee? Your thoughts on this episode, if any?
Yeah, well, one of the benefits of going last is that my turn will very short because I echo what everyone has already said, and much more eloquently than I ever could. And honestly, I never even recognized the hypocrisy angle of Worf until it was brought up earlier here. However, as was mentioned earlier, I did see the similarities between this episode and Cardassians from DS9. Of course, the final decision of to which family the child in question should belong in that episode turned out quite differently than this one. I'll also say that this is one of those rare episodes that I typically skipped when rewatching the series. It's not my favorite. One of my favorites. The funny thing is, I can't really explain why. Perhaps because it centers around a teenager, or because there's little to no action when I was watching it as a child, or maybe even because of that annoying morning sound. I don't know. I don't know. But at any rate, I did definitely appreciate it more now, seeing it through an older person's eyes, more attuned to the questions of morality. Also, as was mentioned, this is, I think, a big step in Picard's journey regarding his feelings about children, or at least teenagers in this case. I'll wrap up with my memorable quote. I'll keep it short and simple. And don't worry, I'm not going to make that annoying morning sound. That's not the quote. It is,
I'm out.
seldom have I heard an explanation so well rehearsed.
Good one. Thank you very much, Dark Lord Chris McGee. All right, it's time for Jake's final take. Sirach, any final thoughts on this episode? I feel like we're going to be like fighting and arguing and things left unsaid. What do you got?
Yeah, there might be some fighting. I will say,
become a patron.
Exactly.
If you want to see fighting.
I want to say that when Jono first walked into Picard's quarters and he picked something up, I laughed when Picard said, "Put that down." It's like you walk into somebody's place, you start messing with stuff. Like, yo, see, relax, man. He just got in the door. You can't start picking stuff up. I was laughing for that. I don't know. I was really conflicted with the fact that I don't think that Picard has the judgment call power to establish parental rights in this particular situation. I don't think it's within his power, because he doesn't have claim to parental rights. Those claims would go to the grandmother and the family, his ancestors, as opposed to just him being a third party acting as a court or something to that extent. So I just don't think that he has the claim. I think that, once again, this episode could have been fixed if the grandmother admiral was on board the Enterprise, and then that person came to the conclusion that this kid would be returned back to this Captain Endar, who thought he was the Endar BR, right?
Hey, yes.
Nope.
So that was one thing. I did think there was some truth to the way this character was identifying, and how you can identify as something other than what you are, and own that. I thought that was something that was believable for me, and within Jono's kind of self-discovery of who he was. The photos of the pictures of his family when they showed him as young, they reminded me of the photos I used to take with my family at Montgomery Ward. We used to go to this, to a shopping mall thing, as a family, everybody
Yes.
gets dressed up and they have the backdrop. And I was thinking of those photos. I was like, where did they get these photos from? Like, this is like in the future. They still got Montgomery
Sears.
Wards, I guess, or Sears, yeah, or Kmart or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Like, so I thought those photos were really cheap and cheesy to me. Made me laugh a little bit. But, I have to say that one thing I did like, which I'm not even sure if I agree that it's the right decision, but I liked seeing Picard admitting flaws in his own. And then Melissa, I think, brought that up. And I do like that. I think it makes him more empathetic as a captain, somebody that I can identify with more when he doesn't always have this perch of, I know everything.
Right.
When he starts to say, hey, admitting mistakes or self-reflection and those kinds of things, I think make him more relatable as a character. Now, in this particular instance, I'm not necessarily agreeing with the decision he made, but I do agree with the idea of reflecting on yourself and not being afraid to admit being wrong. I think those things make for a great captain in that way. Would have liked to see more discussion even between Riker and Picard during that time when Picard kind of walks into the room and says, no, this is the decision we're going to make. Riker's the acting captain at that moment. I would have liked them kind of step aside and maybe argue it out a little bit. Like, I don't think this is the best decision. I want to do this. Picard says, no, I'm going to forgive him for the murder. It's okay. Or for the attempted murder. That's all right with me. Kind of a little bit of a back and forth there. I could have used that. I would have been cool with that too, to see that maybe not everybody agrees with that decision. Yeah, and then lastly, I'll just say again to this guest actor, Sherman Howard, I thought he did a great job for what he was asked to do, because he didn't come across as much as creepy as he could have. He did come across with some level of sympathy for his character. There was a level of being able to relate to his position, especially when he defended the bruises on the kid and said, no, that's him from, playing around roughhousing and this and that. So yeah, those are my final takes on this particular episode.
Thank you very much. Sirach's final takeaway. That's Jake's final take. You see, Eve, Montgomery Ward's is it's like a clothing store, or was.
Saying that because I know it.
Maybe it doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. Maybe it does. All right. That's it for us. Thank you so much to Chris, Faith, Chris. Man, we got 2 Chris's. What luck. Good guys. The Matt, Carrie, Mai, Allison, Eve, Greg, Jason, and Melissa. For myself, for Sirach, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, and Melissa Longo. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. There's April, everybody. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.